Blueprint for change. A plan to overcome challenges. Blueprint for change. A guide to help create opportunities. Blueprint for change. Thought-provoking conversations. Blueprint for change. Why wait when you can contribute to the Blueprint for change?
Good evening. This is Blueprint for Change, the show designed to change your perspective on how you think about national issues facing the Bahamas. We want to help you discover your blueprint for change. I am your host, Michael Diggiss, along with well, I'm not quite sure, Happy, you're not really a co-host, you're a host. So we have the dual dynamic team of Happy and Michael. How about that?
Yeah, that could work. That could work.
That could work?
Yeah.
Always good. Always good to see you, Happy. You have the most appropriate name that any human being could have.
Yeah, happiness is a state of mind. So once you get your mind right and the mindset right, you're right.
There you go.
Yes. So thanks, Mike, again for welcoming myself. And I'd just like to encourage you in your times as in your bereavement as it continues, even though you've already done the deed of the final resting place.
Well, thank you very much. Yes, it's an interesting experience, man. To lose your parents. So and a mother in particular, and sons and mothers have a particular relationship, as you know, being a son.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yes.
Yes. Well, DomDev is about making companies most efficient and cost effective, and so as we go through this collaboration, that's what we're striving to do with the show in our national narrative. And so as we want to go into the new built environment tonight, we have our first in this new launched Blueprint for Change with us doing the dual hosting, as you call it, the dynamic duo. We have our first woman guest. And I'm sure she is very honored to be so.
No pressure, right?
Wow.
Yes. So we have Miss Shacara Lightbourne. Shacara
Lightbourne, yes.
Yes. Shacara Lightbourne is the acting country representative and national technical specialist of the Inter-American Institute of Cooperation on Agriculture for the Bahamas. She takes care of, I guess, about 35 odd member states. Countries. She's a specialist in the Agency of Agriculture and has been with IICA for 8 years. And we look forward to the wealth of knowledge that she has to drop on us tonight.
Particularly for someone so young, right, Happy?
Oh, yes. But I'm young too, I will tell you that.
Yes.
I'm only 45 going backwards.
There you go, yes.
So welcome, Shacara. Good to have you on Blueprint for Change.
Thank you. Good evening to everyone, to your audience. And good evening. It's nice to meet you, gentlemen and ladies in the background. It's a pleasure to be the first woman, the first lady on your program, and hopefully that'll change sometime soon.
Oh yes. We have a number lined up. We have a number lined up, but you just A is for agriculture, which is at the beginning of the alphabet, and so we thought we'd
So there you go, Shacara.
We tried
Shacara, there you go. Yeah, you were starting us off. Yes.
Be sharp.
Yes.
Yeah.
So Shacara, what we wanted to do on the show, we normally lay the foundation when we start. Mm-hmm. And so we strive to be able to change the national narrative and to achieve the mindset in order to accomplish the new built environment. And so as we move in that direction, we've been talking about the mindset necessary to get to that environment that we need, that intentional environment, not a buck up as you go environment. And so we will start with your title, which is a huge title and a huge portfolio.
Yes.
How do you have the capacity to deal with all of that?
Well, fortunately for me, just give a little background of myself. I'm still under 40, pushing 40 very hard in extension. But I started out my agriculture career at 15, and I was actually forced to go into it by my uncle and my father. I am old people children, so they forced us to go volunteer on a farm, at the government farm actually, the piggery of all places. So that's where my agriculture career started, and after spending numerous summers there, I started to like it. And then when I got to be the age where I was going to COB, I studied agriculture there as well. And then after that, I went off to school in Canada. So it kind of fell in my lap in terms of that, the love for agriculture, because it was it was ingrained in me that at some point, things are not always going to be good. And at least you would know how to feed yourself. You know, if you can't have money, you can't find money, at least you'll know how to grow food. So that was always ingrained in me. And, you know, I'm particularly growing up in the city and having a dual lifestyle and growing up in the city and then going to the Family Islands, going to Eleuthera every summer for 3 months, living in the back of the bush and just living off the land. So that had a huge influence in my life and my career choice. So coming from that background, I have a love for everything outdoors and marine, and coming into the challenge as a young professional in agriculture is there's not many of us in the field at all, many Bahamians, I should say. So all of us who are in the field, we know each other. When this job came up for me to apply for it, it was only about 5 of us that were actually qualified for it. So we would talk about it, say, what do you think this organization is, or whatever. Apparently, IICA has been around in the Bahamas since 1998. And the main job of IICA in all its member countries, it's 35 countries in the hemisphere, is to help with rural development and give technical assistance to the government and private sector in any area of agriculture, from farm to table. So anything in between there that you could possibly think of, this is our mandate. This is what we do. So just in thinking of agriculture in the country. By the time I got my influence in agriculture, there wasn't a lot of support for young people to move into agriculture. We're still very much to the tourism sector. Before, I've heard stories of young people being given scholarships to do agriculture, but by the time I got there, there's no scholarships like that for me. I had to get an OAS scholarship and work and do different things. But I don't know at what point we fell off in terms of trying to develop the sector, but it's really hurt us a whole lot. And now, since COVID, we've had a lot of attention in the sector, and I'm actually loving it. The attention we've been getting over the last few months, because people now remember that we have to eat.
Yeah, so we'll dive into that deeper in a moment. So one of the things that we've heard along the tenure of our history as a country is that we have no capacity in agriculture. We have too much rock. We can't grow this and we can't grow that, so that's a limitation. We don't have the economy of scales. There's always some issue. There's not enough technical people like yourself in the industry. There's always some being thrown at us as to why we could not do these things. Our friend Manny Messena, I might be pronouncing it wrong, M-E.
Yeah.
That's how you pronounce it.
Yeah, Manuel Messina. That's my former boss. Yes.
Right. Yeah,
he hired me actually.
He's a good friend of my sister, Danielle, who sends her love to you also.
Oh, I know Danielle well. Yes.
But he always said that when we had Under the Tree conversations, that the Bahamas is not lacking in capacity in this arena. And so we would like you to tell us the truth about it, the facts about it, not the truth as to what our capacity is, because I'm sure with advancement, we should be able to do a lot of things. So what is the mindset to thrive that we are needed to thrive in the new built environment?
I think the mindset is not to try to do everything all the time and find out what you have. Basically, I would start off by doing an assessment of what we actually have and what we can do well. It's kind of like what the saying is, how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time? So we start off with small approximations. We can't expect to compete with larger countries. I know we have a first world mentality, but we're still a developing country. So we have to work with what we actually have. The good thing is that when you speak about our soil and having a lot of rock, yes, this is true, but it's also considered, it's also a natural resource. So I would say in this age of technology, we're in the age of technology. I mean, people are growing, they're growing fruits and vegetables in the desert. So I mean, that should not be an issue. It's just a matter of finding the right technology for our climate, whether it's aquaponics, which is a combination of plants, fish, and bacteria, or hydroponic, or soilless growing, which is also a climate smart way to have a climate smart way for us to develop food production in the country. So it's just a matter of doing an assessment and finding those things that we can grow and that we can do well and that are climate resilient, like sweet potato and cassava, things like that, and substituting what we import with the things that we can do here and not try to do everything. I don't think any country in the world is fully self-sufficient. Everybody needs something from everybody else, but it's just focusing on one. Yes.
So yeah, so Shacara, just a little bit of history. Since you say you fared from Eleuthera in the summers, so Eleuthera was at one point known to be one of the agricultural capitals of the world. From the pineapples and the oranges that we used to export to people like Del Monte and the rest of them. So with that part of our tradition, what would you say went wrong? Because at one point, agriculture played a significant role in who we were as the people.
Well, I would say my family coming from Gregorytown, which is the pineapple capital of the country, and my grandaunt's, I don't know if you know Lady Di, she always told me my grandaunt's were the ones who taught her how to farm pineapple when she came from Long Island. So that's there. And I heard the stories of the HACCP plantation from my father and my uncles and whatnot. So I think what went wrong is a cultural change in perception. Maybe after majority rule, something happened there in that we were told that we can do other things. We kind of moved into other sectors and from that, things kind of fell apart. And so when you get fast money, agriculture is not for the faint of heart. It's a process where one day you could have a fully functioning, thriving farm, and the next day a hurricane could come and wipe the whole thing away, and your whole life savings and everything is gone. So when there's an alternative like tourism, and you get that fast money all the time, you don't have to really invest too much into it. Of course, people are going to move towards that sector. I mean, it's only natural as human beings. Nobody really wants to work hard. We do it out of necessity, right? So I think, but we have to look at it from a perspective that it's a long-term plan that we need to have agriculture. Before you do anything else, breathe or shelter, you need to eat. I mean, after breathing, you need to eat. You need food and you need water. So it needs to be a more long-term plan in that way. And education of our children, I don't know where that fell off, probably after we got so prosperous and rich.
So question two, sorry, Happy, just as an extension of that question though, now we find ourselves, and I guess this is kind of tying back into Happy's questions about the mindset. So we shifted away from, when at one point when we paid attention to the land and we grew crops. Now we seemingly have moved away from that. Now it appears as if we found ourselves in almost a situation where it's a national imperative, because one of the food security issues that has come up is, how do countries feed themselves?
Yeah, well,
So-
I think the illusion for us is that a lot of us don't realize that those first world countries depend very heavily on agriculture. I went to school in Canada, Western Canada, in Saskatchewan, one of the coldest places in Canada.
Yeah.
But the reason I chose that university because it was very agricultural centric. All my classmates came from farms. They pretty much just went there to get the paper. They knew what they were doing.
The wheat and the barley.
Exactly. Wheat, barley,
Yes.
beef, everything. Cowboys, cowgirls, and all of that. So I think that the perception, but they don't realize that these same farmers are the ones who are driving these first world economies. The farmers basically could shut down the whole government if they want to. They're in the background, but they're very, very powerful. The wheat board in Canada or the dairy board in the US, they basically call the shots for the government, but we don't see that. So we figure it's everything else. And in our effort to try to emulate these large countries, we're missing a whole lot.
Yeah. Take it away, Happy. Yeah.
So you mentioned the illusion. I think a lot of people have the illusion that agriculture is just sticking some plant or seeds in the ground and keep going.
Right.
Like you mentioned, in the 50s and 60s, things were very successful. But tell us, because we have a lot of young people out there who needs to know about the sectors that are available. So tell us about the spectrum in architecture, in
Agriculture, yes.
That they could get involved in, because I mean, you're a technical person. You don't have your hand in the soil for your work. I mean, I don't say you're not doing it for yourself, but
I'm not in the field as much as I'd like to, but I still try to. I'm a beekeeper, so my new love is bees now. I'm into bees.
Yeah.
So and there's so many, from farm to table. You can be a crop scientist, and along with being a crop scientist, you can be a researcher in terms of finding new varieties of plants that would work for your climate. For example, our climate is, our islands are very small, so we would need a lot of heat tolerant and salt tolerant varieties of plants. And there's a certain amount of research and development that needs to go into that. So you have people who you can do that. There's agro-processors, people who you don't necessarily work on the farm to grow crops, but you create new products. You create new hot sauces, and you do food safety development. And then there's people along the chain who do logistics of transporting food from one place to the next. When I came home from school, I couldn't find a job. So I started a business where I used to sell grow boxes. My company was Go Light Mobile Markets. So I would buy produce from all the islands and make boxes and sell them for $15 and $30. And I worked probably 2 or 3 days out of the week, and I made rent. So just being an agricultural marketer, or being that in-between person for the farmers and producers. A lot of our farmers are getting up there, elderly, and they just like to grow things. They're not necessarily interested in the marketing part of things and the product development. They're more interested in just fresh produce. But there's so value added really is the way to go. I would say any young person into gaining income, value added products is the way to go. There's so many different things you could develop from raw material. So scientists, you can be agricultural engineers. There's wildlife wardens, wardens dealing with agricultural wildlife that actually frequent farms. There's so many different things. You just have to go all along the chain. I usually do a class or a presentation for the Schools and Ministry of Education on careers in agriculture. So that's a whole hour presentation on its own. But It's just about doing your research and making those linkages not with between food items and as well as non-food items. Like for example, cascarilla. I mean, that's agroforestry, right? Our bush medicines, that's agroforestry. All of that could be turned into medicinal medicinal plants. It's so many different areas. It's a matter of you doing your research.
All right, so let's switch over a little bit now to creating the environment for success in agriculture. You already talked about that full spectrum. So I guess the first question we'll ask on that is, do we have a deficiency in skill set in all of those different disciplines that you mentioned? Or where do we sit in that? What's the uptake for people out there looking for something to get involved in?
Yeah, I think there's some things that you can do right away. There's things like the agro-processing, the crop production, and I know the ministry has a new push to get people growing food through the backyard farming programs, to the hydroponics programs, and the poultry, the layer programs to producing eggs. There's things like that you can do right away, and just getting people to on that level, starting with their home, growing at home, and learning the science of agriculture, because agriculture is an applied science. Mm-hmm. Even you could even go into university and learn in university and growing there in some place in a lab somewhere. When you come home, it's a different situation altogether. When you different environments require different things, you have to be able to adapt to those environments. So I say it's a great push with the backyard farming and the backyard initiative, starting from there, and then those things could definitely spin into creating new economies if people decide to work together. And I always like to preach the gospel of cooperatives. I know sometimes it's a dirty word, but because we don't really trust each other as a people anymore. People don't, and then people don't hold their leaders accountable even on that level. People just figure, okay, he in charge, so he could do everything, but they don't realize it's a collective effort. And all the most successful cooperatives around the world, like Florida Orange Natural Juice, that's Florida Orange Juice, that's a cooperative. Ocean Spray Cranberry, that's a cooperative. People working together. The model cooperative is people helping people to help themselves. So everybody wants to do everything by themselves. They're an individual. I need nobody. But that's the only way I see that we can move forward in the sector, is by working together, having a collective goal and plan, and having it documented and written that this is what the plan is, and we have to follow the plan and hold our leaders accountable in that way.
So sorry, Shacara. Sorry, Happy. What's the role then of BAMSI in all of this?
Well, BAMSI is supposed to be a research institution. It's a school to foster our young people to go into these different fields. So that's just a small part of it. And I know I'm not sure what their graduation rate is now, but at least that starts the conversation of trying to get more agro professionals in the field, and not only agro professionals, young people, as well as existing farmers who've been in the sector for over 30, 40 years. They can learn new things as well. I think BAMSI's role is to bring new technology and make certain things easier. I mean, and not having to, if some other country is doing it, why should we have to reinvent the wheel?
Right.
It's a learning, research and development institution. At least that's my perception of it, of what it's supposed to be. And I think it's a very good idea. It just needs to be tweaked a little bit.
Right.
So when you say tweaking, then that leads me straight into the main question I was going to ask about, in terms of the structure of the industry, in terms of what is needed to be restructured, implemented, or any of those type of elements that will provide an environment where we can actually maximize our potential here in the Bahamas, in the agriculture industry. What do you see? Mike mentioned BAMSI. That's where I was going, but so he jumped me on that one. So I yield to him.
Great minds think alike, Copy.
Yes.
So, yeah, I would start even before BAMSI, before even that level of height of tertiary level education, I would start from our, I have a 7-year-old. I even start with my 7-year-old and my 14-year-old.
Primary school.
Primary school level. It needs to
Okay.
start from there to get them into that mindset of business and seeing agriculture as a business and not some playing in the dirt, or someplace you send children but they don't want to behave or they can't learn. I mean, just seeing it as kind of rebranding what agriculture actually is from a young age. That's the first thing.
So Shacara, just to throw this at you. So people always joke about this. So when kids go into the grocery store, they think that's where fruits and vegetables come from.
Yes,
so,
that's true. Well,
yeah,
not my children, but I know some children that they always. I mean, you just see it when they go to farms and they visit farms, and it's like, oh my God, that's a chicken, that's a cow, that's a pig. They're always fascinated with that types of thing, and we need more of that in our school system.
Right. I say that flippantly because in a lot of ways, a lot of our younger generations aren't aware that the food that they purchase or their parents purchase from the grocery store is actually produced and grown someplace else.
And that's why the backyard initiatives are so important, so you can bring that to them at the home level. You just start from there, from the beginning, and then it'll be easier for you when they get to the BAMSI level to be able to build the sector. Just find out what area they're interested in. If they're a good talker or a salesperson, like my 14-year-old, that's the only time he comes alive, when it's time to sell something. Otherwise, he in zombie land. I don't know. And then when I say, oh, I need you to go sell some honey for me, oh, he doesn't even want me to be there because it's time for money to make, right? So you just have to find out what they're interested in and kind of foster that in that way. And not everybody likes chickens or animals, but they may be into the plants, and just getting them into that mindset of growing, having that connection with their food.
Right.
Yeah. So as we look at the second question that we would have on Facebook, which is what needs to change for that mindset to transform our agriculture industry? I asked the question in reference to regulatory arms and whether there's capital sponsors in the industry, because it takes money and the like. And
there needs to be policy changes. And I think we are going into that. The minister has now implemented some policies, which I think are passed now, where new investors have to spend at least 40%, buy things 40% locally if they can. The government has to buy 75% locally if they can. This is a great initiative. I think the issue with that is we've been behind so long that it's hard for us to even catch up to meet that demand that's out there. The demand is huge for food. I mean, we import 98% of the food, but we don't produce nearly as much to even supply that market. So probably like 20 years behind in terms of production. So just to try to get people, people have been struggling, farmers have been struggling so long in this country that they don't even know how to get back up and start producing quickly again. And we need investment from professionals, doctors, lawyers, accountants need to work along with our farmers and invest in our own food production. Private sector as well. It's not only a job for the government, but it's also a job for private sector.
Right. And so when my mom was working with the hotel industry, the tourism industry, she always fought for why the hotels weren't buying local. And one of the challenges that my little research did was that it would say a lot of it had to do with packing. You said that you were in the packing business. So from a grand scale, is that a void? Because, I mean, do we need another IICA
not even necessarily packing. The main concern is food safety. And the food safety, obviously, this is why it's COVID is what you call a zoonotic disease. It's a disease that's spread from animals to humans. And that's the public health element of it. That's another area that people could go into, dealing with zoonotic diseases like bird flu. Bird flu comes from chickens, you know, as well as West Nile fever and African swine fever. All these things are connected to animals. So somebody can even go in that area. But I think what the hotels and resorts are concerned about more than the packing or how things look is food safety. And that's one of the reasons the Bahamas has not signed on to the WTO yet, because our agriculture sector is weak in that area of providing the structure for food safety. And as I had mentioned to you before, now we have the Bahamas Agricultural Health and Food Safety Authority, who is that regulatory agency who regulates everything between food safety, plant health, animal health, and it coordinates between the Ministry of Health, the Ministry of Environment, and the Ministry of Agriculture. So that's one of the main barriers to getting your stuff into the hotel. They just want that assurance that the food that you're selling them is safe, and then you're not going to make their guests sick or anybody else sick, which is why they go through Bahamas Food Services. Even though Bahamas Food Services may buy from farmers, they get that assurance from Bahamas Food Services that they're going to do the quality control to make sure the food is safe for people to eat. So and that way we need more training of our farmers in good agricultural practices so that we don't have outbreaks like, I'm sure you've heard of the outbreaks in the States with spinach, and they haven't recalled. And that's because there was some breach in the good agricultural practices training, as simple as having a restroom on your farm. A lot of people don't have a bathroom on their farm. And where do you think your workers are gonna go? Where do you think they're gonna go if they don't have a restroom on the farm?
Right.
Wash somewhere or in your farm.
Yep.
And that spreads pathogens throughout the farm. So just having, that basic knowledge of that area is going to put open a lot of markets for people. And then having good manufacturing practices, like with the wild tomatoes. I usually teach HACCP, which is hazard analysis and critical control points, food safety, with cottage industry sometimes. And I've heard them say, oh, my tomatoes pop up. Some of them, sometimes they start exploding in the nighttime. They popping all over the place. I say, I wonder why that is. Yeah, because you had some bacteria in there that was just growing and growing and growing. They got so much that they caused the ball to explode. Just giving people that basic knowledge of the pathogens that are associated with the products that they produce. In that way. So knowledge in agro-processing, making food safe, and I think that's one of the most important barriers so far. But food safety is not cheap, it's expensive. And the amount of training and equipment and testing and research that has to go into it is expensive.
But even that is a career opportunity as well, right? Yeah,
it's a huge career opportunity. We don't have enough food technologists, and I think we could learn from a good example is our fisheries industry. We wouldn't have been able to enter that international market unless we had the proper labs and technicians in place to be able to have that product exported to Europe. And right now we exporting live lobster to China. And we didn't have that system in place in terms of the regulations and proper testing and all of that. We wouldn't have been able to do that. So all we need to do is transfer those same methodologies and systems to the agricultural sector from the marine sector. The fishermen, the fishery sector has a very good blueprint. They have a very good blueprint and we just need to transfer it. We need to transfer it to the agricultural
sector. No pun intended, right?
No pun intended.
No pun intended. That's quite all right.
Yeah, no pun intended.
Mike, maybe we could take us a break
as
and
an
then come
extension.
back and
Sorry to that comment, though. Mm-hmm. Sure.
So I was saying maybe you could take us a break, and then when we come back, we could talk about the.
Not a problem. Yeah. So.
On.
Yeah, not a problem. So we'll take Brother Kermit, our producer tonight. We'll take our first break, and we'll be right back after these brief messages.
Eleanor Roosevelt said that great minds discuss ideas, average minds discuss events, and small minds discuss people. The ultimate design starts from thought, and thought is a product of one's mindset.
Let's change our mindset from being employees to being employers, from being workers to being owners.
Why don't we tell it the opportunity instead of the job, the job?
I think one of the things that we need to understand first for us to appropriately, I guess, get the litmus test on how we see the creatives, how we see creatives in society in general, is how we understand and value our own creativity.
What's the steps to get out of the rut?
Leaders have to lead. Leaders have to lead.
The challenge that we have is with the political the public sector, where they need to understand that the private sector should take the lead and they should be followers and listen to the private sector and let them take the lead role in causing the kind of environment that we need to happen. And like I said, politicians tend to want to take the lead and be discussing technical issues that they have no knowledge of. And that is the main problem and the mindset that we have to change, please.
Welcome back. You're listening to Blueprint for Change, the show designed to change your perspective on how you think about national issues facing the Bahamas. So happy, Shacara actually, what should I say, as the first female on our combined collaborative and co-op show. We're now a cooperative, Shacara, just so you know.
You need to be, yes.
There you go.
Excellent.
Listen, I've always believed in collaboration. I think to me, success only happens through collaboration. No one does anything by themselves. And I think that's the most effective way to compete, is to actually collaborate.
Right. It's enough for everybody.
Yes.
Many hands make light work.
There you go.
It's enough for everybody to get peace.
You are definitely old people children. Yes.
Yeah.
So anyway, happy we were talking about an interesting subject about financing and funding of this sector for all these initiatives that Shacara has been mentioning. And I'm intrigued by what she has to say. But as you said, you asked the question, how does this sector get funded? Where's the financing for it?
Well, the first thing I would say is by forming these cooperatives, cooperatives are recognized internationally, and there's a lot of international funding out there for people. The money isn't as abundant as it used to be. So a lot of international organizations, they like to fund groups, and they want to make the most impact they can make on the most amount of people that they can. So by having cooperatives and federations and whatnot, you may not get cash directly, but you will get technical assistance, you will get input supplies, you may get a greenhouse for your cooperatives or whatever. Just by working together and forming groups, you can get funding that way. I know there's also here in the Bahamas Development Bank is kind of changing its perspective on funding in agriculture, as well as I know there's some other things coming on stream in terms of small grants through the SBDC and other areas. And like I said, there's also some angel funders out there as well. I've come across a couple of them, but they just want to make sure that they just want to make sure their money is put to good use. And that's where the part of it is treating your business, agricultural business, as an agri-business. It's a business. You can't just sell fruits and vegetables and drip the money in your pocket and take care of your sweetheart and don't write nothing down. It's about record keeping and being accountable. A lot of reasons why our farmers and our people don't get funding internationally because they can't show records of what they've been doing for the last 3, 5, 10, 30, 50 years. They can't show any records besides saying I do it. You don't have no financial records, no technical records. I mean, it's as simple as writing something down on a notebook. You don't have to be computer savvy. Write it down and then find when your little grandchildren to put it in the computer or something like that. At least you'll have a record to say, okay, this is what I spent on these inputs to grow this tomato. You know what the cost of production is for every single thing that you grow. So we have to take a certain level of accountability from that end for people to trust us with giving us money.
But that's also a job opportunity, isn't it?
Exactly. And an agribusiness professional help to develop plans, help to develop tools for you to be able to, and that's one of the things I know SBDC is working on, as well as we do that to a certain extent, IICA. We do a lot of governance trainings with producer groups, you know, we just recently did an assessment with the Bahamas Network of Rural Women Producers. So this is a group we have, IICA is the secretariat for, and it's an all women's group, and they do different things like handicraft and they're farmers and whatnot. So we went through an assessment. We designed an assessment that goes through every area of whether it's their accounting, their financial, their human resources, just their linkages with partners and other organizations, just going through the whole structure of how their organization runs. But it's just a matter of, first of all, being accountable in your own business, accountable to yourself, keeping good records, and then you could be accountable to other people, because I don't know if nobody giving free money off air like that. If you know somebody, just let me know, but nobody just giving you money for no reason.
When we look at the new built environment, we're talking about intentional thought and action and having opportunities for the public citizenry and to improve our quality of life. So help us understand, Mr. Man out there or Mrs. Woman out there who wants to get in the industry, who's maybe been laid off, and help them understand what kind of money we're talking about in this industry, including the investors, what they might be able to gain back and the like, so that they have a feel for what is real in the Bahamas. I mean, a lot of what we talked about might be academic or theory to some people, but what's the real thing that they could expect if they get in this industry, if it's purring?
I would say if I was somebody who didn't know anything, I would start out with you have to do your homework. You have to do your own research when you're developing your business. I would first go to the custom imports and look at all the different items that we import and see which one of those items I would be interested in producing or substituting for the economy. In some cases, you don't need a lot of money to start an agricultural business. For example, I did a project in Grand Bahama. It was a beekeeping project. Grand Bahama is for young people, because Grand Bahama had an unemployment rate of, I guess they may still do, 33%. And so I designed a project along with BDB and Office of the Prime Minister, where we trained 30 beekeepers in apiculture development. And so they started their business, they went through 14 weeks of training, and they now have, a lot of them still now have their hive boxes. They produce honey, they produce candles, lotions, any other product you can get from the hive. A lot of them are producing now, and they're still in their own business. And that's just that sector. That's the sector that we could develop in the Bahamas. Even selling queen bees to Florida or other islands, we can do that, because we don't have a lot of diseases that some of those countries have in terms of bees. One queen bee could be $40, you know. We could produce those easily, and we have so many different islands that where there isn't anybody, that we could have apiaries on those islands just producing honey for export. Or we can go into the composting business, where all that debris and fallen trees, we could mulch that or turn that into wood pellets, which people could use for their grills and charcoals, and we could export that. as well as we could, there's so many different areas. And then there's the food processing area of things. We could produce, let's say, lamb jerky or something, or sheep, whatever. Just make a new spin on some kind of snack that maybe cruise ship, those 5 million cruise ship tourists we used to get, something that they could possibly spend a little $2 or $3 on, something that we could actually sell them, or they should be able to take home without feeling that they spent their whole vacation money on something that they didn't really want. So it's just a matter of doing your homework, first of all.
Okay. So Shacara, based on what you're saying, and I know Happy and I have this discussion off and on. So from what you're saying, we shouldn't have an unemployment challenge in this country. In fact, we should have the complete opposite.
Right.
Yes. I like to play the game of connecting agriculture to every sector and every job. I like to play that game. Let's connect agriculture to tourism. I mean, agriculture and tourism have been trying to get them to get married for a long time now. I mean, farmers, when you setting up your farm, set it up in such a way that people could come and visit your farm. People can stay and camp on your farm. People can come and bird watch on your farm. Set it up in such a way that while you wait for your crops to grow, you entertain people.
Right.
For them, some people in Europe, they'll actually pay you to come and work on your farm. They'll pay you to work on your farm. And just different things like that, agri-tourism initiatives, or let's say thematic groups, creative groups, like with the pineapple. Tourists coming to visit the pineapple farms, like they do the coffee plantations in the DR, which I've been to, or even I've spoken to Tourism Development Corporation about Cascarilla. I mean, Cascarilla is in Campari, so why can't we create a whole tour around going to see Cascarilla and how it's grown, and creating our own products and people creating their own products in Cascarilla, or whatever other item we identify, or even making their own bush teas. I mean, tourism and agriculture is a no-brainer for me, and I think we need to develop that in more ways, and from the food part of tourism, the culinary part of tourism, as well as the natural environmental part of tourism, and the food production part of tourism. So that would be the first sector that I would marry together and create a lot of jobs. So
Shacara, though, going back to the issue that Happy always kind of harps on, and it's becoming self-evident more and more as we have conversations with our various guests, the mindset. So I'm trying to understand, based on what you just said, what is the impediment for us to move in the direction you just described? Because it seemed such a natural direction to move in. We have the infrastructure, meaning that the land is there. We have the natural environments that is there to produce products. So what's the problem?
I think that drive and motivation, people just need to be motivated. And I think through working together, we need to help each other out more. I just feel like we don't help each other out enough. Even if it's two people working together, it becomes, being an entrepreneur is not easy at all. You get tired a lot. And just having that support to be able to move in different directions needs to be there. Maybe you need somebody to hold your hand. You don't know what to do. I just start by finding something you like to do, trying to figure out what your gifts are, and just putting them in the practice, and reaching out to organizations like mine. Of course, I'm always available. People always message me all the time, whether it's professionals in accounting or doctors or even just young people asking me what sector or what could they do and where they could get certain information. I'm there to link us to the region. Being a part of IICA has given me the opportunity to meet with professionals and link with countries all over the world. So I'm a wealth of information, and any area of agriculture that you would need, I'm sure I can find a specialist or someone that's doing the same thing and would be able to help you. It's just a matter of seeking out that information and wanting, having that self-motivation to move forward and make some things happen.
Yeah, so you mentioned the self-motivation. A lot of people may not be so motivated to, like you say, run their own business and the like, and there might be such a gap there. So in terms of other people coming in, when I say coming in, I mean Bahamians in particular, stepping up and like Mike mentioned, collaborating and forming their cooperatives or the like in the Bahamas, and they be the ones to employ the whole spectrum. Is that something that is being encouraged? Is that, or is there impediments to stop people, why people would not want to do that? If I have $1 million or Mike has 2, you see, always has more than me. Could we then put
I received the blessing. I received the blessings. Thank you.
Yes, yes. Could we put that on the table and actually formulate something that could and then employ maybe 50 or 100 people or more over time?
That's definitely being encouraged. I don't know if you saw the launch that the Christian Council had last week. Did you see that launch of
I saw that, but I actually wanted to find out more about that because I really was wondering why would the Christian Council be involved in that aspect when there's so many other aspects that they could focus on.
If you think about it, it makes a lot of sense. The church should be.
I don't know enough about it. Yeah.
Yeah, the church should be. I mean, this is where people go. We're very, you say we are a Christian nation. So, I mean, the church should be leading the charge in food production. I know a lot of the churches got those backyard kits and they were given to people who can't afford to buy them. And
so what exactly are they doing? Because what exactly are they doing? Because I don't have enough information to know. You know,
they're forming their own cooperatives. They're beginning to do their own farming initiatives. It's just starting out. So I just in speaking with the minister, I know that there's an initiative to put people to work, especially they're starting with their congregation.
Right.
They're working together as a group to be able to produce food as well as bring in input supplies that they need. They're getting land to do different things. So I think it's a pretty good initiative to start from there. They could impact a lot of people.
Right.
All right. So when we look at the fact that we have, from what you're saying, agriculture to me is huge. Do we leave it a lot off the table? Fisheries is huge. We had a guest who Monty, who says that construction is the second biggest pillar in the country because we're not categorizing it properly. So that's why it gives us false expectation. If you ask me, I might be biased and I might say communications is the biggest of all of them, right? But
he's not biased, right? He's not biased.
I probably could prove that, but I ain't gonna take the time to do that. It's not
you need to have a debate just on that.
Yes.
Yeah, no, but the point is that the Bahamas, Mike mentioned that in one of the earlier shows that we have 3 major natural resources in sun, sand, sea, and all the things that go along with those that are sustainable. I add people to it, and I really don't see if we have those with fisheries coming from the sea and agriculture coming from the land and so forth, why we are struggling and the like. So
lack of knowledge.
I was just going to ask you that. Is that the biggest issue why our mindset is not changing?
Lack of knowledge, lack of strategy. We're not being strategic enough. You mentioned that the other industry, construction, is not categorized properly. Agriculture definitely is a sector that's not, we don't know everything that it touches. We don't know how far it extends. It's much larger than we think as a country it is.
Well, they could come to down there. They need
knowledge.
Yeah.
Say it again. Sorry.
The down there, if they need strategy help, I mean that's there. So as we wrap up, wrap down, or whatever the word we want to use for it, we have all of these things available to us. we have bright minds like you, under 40. I can remember when I was under 40 and throwing rocks and bottle. I hope you throw rocks and bottle where you work and don't, anyway, let's leave that alone. So, but innovation has to be on the table. And so we know everybody has this buzzword of marijuana is the thing to do. But I think, like you mentioned, there's a number of other things that persons who might not be challenged with the stigma of marijuana could get into.
I would jump on bush teas first. We could export bush teas.
Okay.
Yes.
Bush teas, great. Yeah.
And we could have people picking, we could have young people picking tea leaves. Why can't we? That's something easy. We have that traditional knowledge already. So I don't know.
But you know, Shacara, you mentioned the fact that education. So we aren't even aware of what we have.
Yes, exactly. And that's why people come and dig it because we don't know what we have.
But that's the next thing that we seem to like for other people to come in and do things, but we don't seem to want to encourage our own to do. And that's one of the reasons why we do these shows, to try and encourage society to get involved in areas that they don't know about. And so that's why we really appreciate you coming on the show to help us, educate us on what we can do in the short space of time. And we will continue the conversation as we can. Facebook is there and the like.
So yeah, just so and this happens all the time, right, Shacara? So don't be surprised that we run out of time and you're only getting into the subject matter, and that's fine. In fact, that's the way it ought to be, because the subject matter is so important. It is actually of national significance, and it is, and someone said it is, part of our national security.
Right, it's definitely a national security issue. Yeah. I mean, the quickest way to get rid of people is through their food and their water. Not even. I have a friend who always tells me the Third World War will be about food and water. Yeah. I mean, they'll be fighting with bioterrorism and food and water, so not guns.
So
it is definitely an issue, a national security
right.
issue.
So I think we definitely need to continue this conversation and the importance of understanding, like you said, it is one of those fundamental things, because on Maslow's hierarchy, it sits right there at that level where you can't move up that hierarchy unless you're able to feed and clothe and shelter yourself.
Exactly.
So
then you can move on to other things like communication.
Yes.
Let me tell you something. If you can't communicate with nobody, you can't do anything as a community. You can do it as by yourself, but not as a community.
It's true. Media is the biggest way we could change the perception of agriculture. So I totally agree with that, which is why all of my workshops now, I'm trying to get it recorded and getting training videos put out, because that's the way that we could change the mindset of our people.
Well, this talk will be on the Facebook page, Blueprint for Change show. So you could point as many people as you want to it. They could get your little information that, or our little information that we help you with, try to steer out of winky dinky brains in the right direction. But,
yeah, so happy you want to take us out, because I could see the producer will signaling us as we've come to the end of our wonderful conversation with the first female, right? And you've done such a wonderful job. Thank you very much, Shacara.
I enjoyed it. It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Oh, I learned so much. So thank you for that.
Yes, very, very much so. And I also like to thank you for being on Blueprint for Change. And we look forward to having more conversations. Like I said, we could do it on Facebook, or we have some slots later on in the year. Maybe we can bring you back and go into a more specific area that you want to just drill down deep now this time.
I think we're gonna have to take it one bite at a time. Like I said, find one topic at a time.
yes, and go from there and there. So as we take our leave now, we always like to encourage listeners to leave their messages, their comments and questions and concerns and suggestions on the Facebook page. But by all means, stay home unless you really have to go out. Practice physical distancing when you're around people. Wear your mask according to the protocols. Don't wear your mask all week and expect not to get sick. Change it, wash it, whatever you need to do with it, but keep going on it. And whatever you do, as the good one says above, love digitally. And so with that, you've been listening to Blueprint for Change, the show designed to change your perspective and to help you think of national issues in the Bahamas in a different way. Thank you, and good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night. Thank you.
Blueprint for Change is a collaboration between Michael Diggiss and Associates and Dom Dev Enterprises Limited.